The Christmas cards lay scattered across my kitchen table, their glossy edges catching the weak winter light. Red ribbons, smiling faces, the scent of pine still clinging to the envelopes. And yet, something was missing. Lydia's face. My granddaughter's bright, gap-toothed smile had been wiped clean, as if she'd never existed at all. My hands trembled so hard the cards nearly slipped to the floor. If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me where you're listening from. Because sometimes, the deepest betrayals come from the people we call family. That was the moment I realized love alone couldn't protect her. Let me show you how it all began. It was a little after 2:30 p.m. when I sat at my kitchen table, sunlight spilling through the lace curtains, turning everything gold and quiet. The kind of winter afternoon that feels still, peaceful even. A mug of coffee steamed beside me as I started sorting through the stack of Christmas cards that had come in that morning's mail. I've always loved this part of the season, catching up with distant relatives, seeing the kids grow year by year through glossy photos printed on cheerful cardstock. But that peace didn't last long. I remember picking up the first card from my son, Ethan, and his wife, Brooke. It was beautiful, perfectly staged, like something out of a magazine. Everyone coordinated in red and cream, the Christmas tree glittering behind them, snow-dusted porch lights glowing in the background. But something felt off. I couldn't quite name it at first. My eyes scanned the photo once, twice, and then it hit me. Lydia wasn't there. My granddaughter. My sweet 6-year-old Lydia, who had just lost her first tooth, who'd spent Thanksgiving curled up beside me reading her picture books. She was gone. Not in the back row, not cut off by the frame. Just missing. I thought maybe it was a mistake. Maybe there was another card in the envelope, a different photo meant just for me. But when I checked, there was nothing. I looked again at that perfect, smiling family. Ethan, Brooke, their 2 older boys, and felt the air leave my lungs. Lydia's favorite red dress, the one she wore that day, replaced with empty space. I reached for another envelope. This one from Brooke's mother, another photo, another Christmas card. And again, Lydia erased, cleanly, deliberately, as though she had never existed. My hands trembled as I spread the cards out across the table, the silence of the house pressing in on me. The realization settled like cold stone in my chest. This wasn't an accident. Someone had made the choice to remove her, to erase her from the family she belonged to. And I just sat there for a long time, staring at those smiling faces that suddenly looked so false, trying to understand how anyone could do something so cruel. That afternoon changed everything for me. It wasn't just about a picture. It was about what that picture meant, what it revealed. To understand why that moment broke me, you need to know what came before. I still remember the phone call that changed everything. It was a cold, gray morning, the kind where the sky feels too heavy, like it already knows what's coming. I was standing by the sink, rinsing dishes, when the phone rang. The voice on the other end was trembling, hesitant. There had been an accident. My eldest son, Daniel, and his wife, Claire, were gone. For a few seconds, I couldn't move. The sound of the water running filled the silence, and I just stood there, my hand frozen midair, unable to take in the words. They had been driving home from a weekend trip, a patch of black ice, a collision, And that was it. My world shattered in an instant. When the shock finally began to fade, another call came. It was about Lydia, their 6-year-old daughter. She needed someone to take her, someone to help her through this. I didn't even hesitate. That night, she came to me, holding a tiny pink suitcase and her stuffed bunny with one ear nearly torn off. She didn't cry, not at first. She just stood in the doorway, wide-eyed and quiet, as if waiting for her parents to walk in behind her. Those first few weeks were quiet, heavy with grief. I'd make dinner and she'd pick at her food in silence. At night, I'd hear her whispering to her bunny, asking if Mommy and Daddy could see her from the stars. I didn't have answers, only the promise I made to her when I tucked her in that she would never face this world alone. Slowly, life began to find rhythm again. We'd read together every night, bake cookies on Saturdays, and take little walks down Maple Street to feed the ducks at the pond. She'd started smiling again, small, shy smiles, but real ones. And for a while, I believed we were healing. That's when Ethan and Brooke started visiting more often. Ethan, my younger son, always had a good heart, though a little too easily influenced by appearances. Brooke was polished, charming, and particular about everything. At the time, I thought they were trying to help, to make Lydia feel like part of a bigger family again. I was grateful for that. I told myself that family could mend what tragedy had broken. Looking back now, I realize how naive that hope was. I believed love would be enough to hold us all together. I didn't see the quiet cracks forming beneath the surface, the ones that would soon split our family apart. It started small, so small I almost convinced myself it was nothing. Little things that seemed harmless at first. During Sunday dinners at Ethan and Brooke's house, Lydia would always sit at the far end of the table, closest to the kitchen door, while Brooke's 2 boys sat near her, chattering about school and their new toys. Brooke would glance at Lydia now and then, offering a polite smile. But there was a distance there, something cold and restrained. At first, I told myself she was just tired. Brooke always had that polished way of carrying herself, perfectly dressed, perfectly poised, the kind of woman who needed everything to look just so. Maybe, I thought, she just didn't know how to connect with a child who'd been through so much. But then the little things began to add up. When family pictures were taken after dinner, Brooke would gather her boys and call for Ethan, her hand resting gently on his arm as she adjusted the camera settings. I'd wait, expecting her to call Lydia over too, but she never did. Instead, she turned to me with that smooth, practiced tone and say something like, "Let's just get one of the kids together first, before moving on to another pose." I told myself it was just timing, that Lydia would be included later, but later never came. There were birthday invitations for the boys' classmates that never included Lydia. Texts about family outings that didn't reach my phone until after they'd already happened. I'd ask about it casually, trying not to sound accusing, and Brooke would always respond with a sugary apology or an excuse that didn't quite fit. It left me feeling foolish, as if I were imagining things, reading too much into coincidences, yet I couldn't ignore the look on Lydia's face. She never complained, but I could see it. That quiet confusion when she realized she wasn't being asked to join in. The way she'd sit with her little bunny in her lap, pretending not to notice. Children don't always have words for rejection, but their eyes say everything. I tried to make up for it. Extra hugs, small surprises, bedtime stories that lasted a little longer. But deep down, something in me had shifted. The warmth I'd once felt during those family dinners had turned brittle. I remember driving home one night, the streetlights flickering through the windshield, and thinking, something isn't right. I didn't know what it was yet, but I could feel it. A quiet cruelty hiding beneath all that politeness. And I promised myself I'd keep an eye on things, that I'd protect Lydia, no matter what. I just didn't realize how far Brooke would go. That December, the house looked like something from a magazine. Brooke had gone all out for the family photo shoot, garlands perfectly draped, candles flickering on the mantel, the smell of cinnamon and pine in the air. Everyone was dressed in matching shades of cream and red, just as she'd planned. It should have been beautiful. It should have felt like family. But as soon as we gathered in the living room, I noticed the small details that no one else seemed to see. Lydia didn't have a matching dress, Brooke said she must have forgotten to order her one. Lydia stood there in her little blue cardigan, holding her stuffed bunny, her eyes darting between the other kids who looked like they'd stepped out of a catalog. Brooke smiled and waved her toward the back of the room, telling her to sit still for just a few. I could see the uncertainty in Lydia's face, the way she hesitated as if she wasn't sure she belonged. Something in me hardened. I placed my hand gently on her shoulder and said she'd be in the photos, all of them. For a moment, I saw her light up, that shy little smile breaking through. She stood beside her cousins, chin lifted, proud to be part of something again. When the photographer finished, everyone clapped and went to the kitchen for cocoa. Brooke was already talking about printing cards for the neighbors and posting on social media. I told myself not to overthink it, that maybe the tension I felt was just me being protective. Weeks later, when the cards arrived in my mailbox, I sat at my kitchen table, just like every year, ready to admire my family's smiling faces. I opened the envelope slowly, the paper smooth and glossy under my fingertips. And then my heart stopped. Lydia wasn't there. Not in a single photo. Not even blurred in the background. The space where she'd stood had been filled in, erased cleanly, as though she had never existed. At first, I thought it had to be a mistake, but deep down, I already knew. The angles, the retouching, it was too precise. Later, when I called the photographer, he hesitated before admitting what I feared most. Brooke had paid extra for custom edits. She'd asked for Lydia to be removed. I sat there for a long time after that, staring at those perfect smiles, feeling something inside me break. It wasn't just cruelty, it was erasure of a child, of love, of everything that family was supposed to mean. And in that moment, I made myself a promise. I wouldn't stay silent. Not after this. For a long time. I just sat there at the table, staring at the glossy cards scattered before me. The room was silent except for the slow tick of the kitchen clock. The images blurred through the tears I didn't even realize were falling. I kept touching the paper, running my thumb over the spot where Lydia should have been. The airbrushed emptiness that once held her smile. My chest felt hollow, like someone had reached in and quietly taken something I could never get back. When Lydia came into the room, she climbed onto my lap, curious. She pointed to the photo and asked where she was. Her voice was soft, unguarded, and it broke me. I wanted to lie, to shield her, to say the photographer made a mistake. But the truth sat heavy on my tongue. I told her that sometimes people make cruel choices, choices that don't make sense, even to grown-ups. She looked at the picture for a long time, then tucked her bunny under her chin and whispered that maybe she hadn't smiled enough that day. That was the moment something inside me shifted. The sorrow that had frozen me began to turn into something else, something fierce and steady. No one would ever make this child feel invisible again. I didn't know yet what I would say or how I'd say it, but I knew I couldn't let silence do the speaking for me anymore. Christmas dinner was only days away, and this time, I wouldn't stay silent. The night of Christmas dinner arrived with the kind of cold that settled deep in your bones. I remember standing on Brooke's front porch, my hands clutching a small wrapped box that seemed to grow heavier the longer I held it. Through the window, I could see the glow of the tree, the flicker of candles, the picture-perfect family tableau Brooke had orchestrated once again. Laughter floated out through the glass, practiced, polite, rehearsed. When Ethan opened the door, he looked relieved, almost eager to smooth things over. Brooke was right behind him, radiant as always, wearing a dress that shimmered under the soft light. She greeted me with warmth that felt like frost beneath the surface. The table was beautifully set. Gold-rimmed plates, name cards, cloth napkins folded into perfect triangles. Everything was flawless, just as she liked it. But beneath the music and the laughter, I could feel something trembling inside me. I smiled, passed dishes, poured wine, played my part. All the while, that little box rested near my plate, its weight pulling at my conscience. I looked at Lydia, her small hands folded in her lap, her eyes darting to Brooke now and then, searching for some kind of acknowledgement that never came. And that was when I knew. I couldn't let this charade continue. When dessert was served and conversation lulled, I slid the box across the table toward Brooke. I told her it was a small gift to show my appreciation for all the effort she'd put into keeping the family together. She smiled. Of course. She always smiled. As she peeled back the wrapping paper, I felt my pulse in my throat. The laughter faded. She lifted the lid, pulled out the frame, and stared. 2 photos, side by side. On the left, the original picture from the Christmas shoot. Lydia standing between her cousins, clutching her bunny, smiling shyly. On the right, the one that had been printed and mailed. Lydia gone, replaced by a neat stretch of plaid couch cushion. The room went still. Brooke's hand froze mid-air. The color drained from her face. Across the table, Ethan looked from one photo to the other, confusion clouding his expression as realization dawned. The air grew thick, heavy with unspoken horror. I could feel everyone's eyes flicker toward me, waiting for me to explain, to soften the blow. But there was no softening this. I said that families are built on love, not perfection. And when someone decides a child isn't picture perfect enough to belong, that isn't family anymore. I said Lydia deserved better than to be erased, not from photos, not from memory, not from love. The words trembled at first, but with each breath, they steadied. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The truth spoke louder than anger ever could. No one moved. Brooke's mask cracked just slightly, her smile faltering, her composure slipping. Ethan's eyes filled with something between disbelief and shame. I didn't stay to watch the pieces fall. I just stood, kissed Lydia on the crown of her head, and walked out into the cold. The air outside burned against my skin, but for the first time in weeks, I could breathe. Behind me, through the frosted window, I saw Brooke turn away, her face half hidden in shadow. Every lie, I thought, has a breaking point, and this was only the beginning. The house fell silent after that night. No calls, no messages, just a hollow stillness that stretched through the days that followed. I thought maybe Brooke would apologize, or at least try to explain. Instead, what came was a strained email from Ethan, full of vague phrases about misunderstandings and not making a scene. That told me everything. It wasn't until later, when a distant cousin mentioned something at church, that the full picture began to form. Brooke had been telling people for months that she and Ethan were taking on more responsibility for the family finances, that I was getting older and might not be able to manage things much longer. She'd even hinted that Lydia's presence in the family had been disruptive, a polite way of saying inconvenient. It hit me then, erasing Lydia from those photos wasn't just cruelty. It was control. She wanted the world to see the family as hers, her children, her husband, her perfect home. There was no room in that image for a little girl who reminded everyone of Ethan's late brother, or for a grandmother who wouldn't play along. Once I understood that, the anger drained out of me, replaced by something quieter. Sadness, maybe, or acceptance. People destroy what they can't control, and Brooke's need for perfection had poisoned everything it touched. So I made my choice. I would love my granddaughter fiercely, openly, without apology. But from now on, I would keep a safe distance from the rest. Some families can't be fixed, only faced, and I had finally seen mine clearly. The days after Christmas were quiet, almost unnaturally so. Brooke stopped calling, and Ethan's messages grew shorter, polite but distant. I didn't chase either of them. Some silences are their own kind of truth. Lydia and I spent our mornings baking or reading together, her laughter filling the spaces that guilt and sorrow used to occupy. She never asked again about the photos, and I never brought them up. I'd thought justice would feel like victory, but it didn't. It felt like calm, a steady breath after years of holding it in. The truth was out, and that was enough. Sometimes peace is the only justice we're meant to have. Looking back now, I realized that standing up for Lydia wasn't just about protecting her, it was about reclaiming my own voice. Family should be a place of love, not fear or silence. I learned that sometimes doing the right thing means standing alone, but peace always follows truth. Lydia's laughter reminds me that love can survive even the deepest wounds, as long as it's honest. We can't control how others treat us, but we can choose what kind of heart we carry forward. Have you ever faced something like this? Tell me in the comments. I read everyone.